Hi. Hi, welcome back. Ryan and Cars. I just made a video and it was posted. I don't know if you've watched it or not, but I was with my daughter in the car and we were talking and quickly talking about the price of cars and what's happening in Canada with the cars and how they're going to become very expensive. They're already expensive, but it's just going to get more and more expensive. Um, I kind of wanted to revisit this because I have a story on why I'm saying what I said about that, on how young Canadians will never be able to afford a new car. Can't afford a house, they won't be able to afford a new car. I was living on Vancouver Island. I was working for the federal government. And at the time, it was right around the time I was buying the Hornet. It was about a year into the contract that I was working for the federal government. And one of the young girls that I was working with, she had to have been about 25, in and around that. But the cost of living on the island was, well, it was so challenging for anybody, but for her, she actually lived about in an outside community. We were basically, I was working at the military base, and she lived in a place called Langford, which was, it's about a half an hour drive away on the freeway. But during rush hour and stuff, it's always longer, right? Now the thing was is that she was looking forward to starting this job. She had worked lower paying jobs. You could say entry level, which are not entry level anymore because of the experience you need to get them. But so landing this job for her was um, like winning the lottery. The pay was more. You had really good benefits, and there was a pension. And the work schedule hours, they would shuffle around so that she could get to and from work, sort of thing. Now, here's the thing: she didn't own a car and was hoping that with this job, she would be able to save up money to buy a car of some kind. And she lived that far away from work because, to be honest with you, the rents were cheaper where she was living. The closer she would have gotten to Victoria would have been not at all feasible for her to afford to live. Wouldn't be affordable for her to even pay, to pay rent, food, that sort of thing. As it was, we were getting paid a very decent wage, um, and she was living on her own. She did not have roommates, but her entire paycheck went to rent and food. This was in 2023, so post pandemic, the cost of living on the island, well, everywhere went up, of course, right? But on the island specifically, housing skyrocketed quickly, and actually so did the food. Uh, my household was even struggling with the food prices. Now, where I live now is on par with what the prices were then. Gas was fuel. Regular 87 octane was it was always above 220, $2.20 a liter. And for the longest time it was 225. Like I had a BMW and I was putting premium in it. I was paying 260, 270, 280 for it. So it was expensive to drive a car, especially if you lived far away. But I live very close to where I was working there. It was like a 5-minute drive. But we were sitting down one day on a coffee break, I think, or something, or our lunch break. And she was telling me this, where she was hoping that, she came from these low paying jobs, and finally on the island here she got the cushy job. She landed this really, because that was, working at the base was one of the better jobs, right? Working for the federal government. The government jobs were the cream of the crop on the island, basically, especially if you didn't have a business. Not that they all paid well, because they're all public service jobs, but the benefits were great, and the schedules were flexible. You got lots of days off to, for mental health and, physical health and things like that. Like, you could take sick leave without it hurting you at your job, sort of thing, right? And you didn't have to get everybody sick by coming in sick, so that you know you wouldn't miss hours, sort of thing, right? But she was telling me that she was so happy that she got this job, that she figured this bump in pay, which she thought was going to be this, amazing, abundance of cash, uh, quickly turned out to be not the case for her. And she was telling me that she took this place out in Langford because, if she could not afford, unless she had three roommates or four roommates to a two-bedroom apartment, she wouldn't be able to afford, to live closer to where we worked, sort of thing. So she chose it out there to live cheaply, and she was living frugally. And all of this was to hope for her to get her car, to get eventually to get a car, right? And we had been working together for about a year, maybe 10 months. Like, she did come in after me. And throughout that time, she was actually sitting down there with me, and the car thing came up, or I was looking for a car, or I bought the car. I can't remember if I already bought it or not. I think I had bought it, and yeah, then she started talking about car prices, and she's like, I moved out to Langford to live cheaply so I could save money, so that this and that. She was like, I'm a single woman. I need a car. I'm young. I should be able to afford this, but I can't. Like, the cost of living has gone up so much that I will never be able to afford a car. Right now, I'm struggling to buy food. And if I didn't have this job and we were working, she worked in the galley, and they didn't want us to bring outside food. It was a food safe thing, sort of. So, external food wasn't kind of allowed. We weren't allowed to bring a lunch, sort of thing, right? We had to eat what was prepared at the job, sort of thing, right? And it was an abundance of food. It was all good and everything like that. And so she ate there, and even took stuff home afterwards. And she's like, without this job and me eating here, I wouldn't even be able to afford groceries at this point. So, like, I'll as if this is the way things are going, and this is the way things are for the next 10, 15 years, she goes, I will never be able to afford a car. Never mind a house. Like, I've given up on a house, she said. Like, I know it's the island, it's hard to come by, and houses are expensive, and blah, blah, blah. She goes, I'll probably never own a house. I know that. I understand that. She goes, but I thought for sure I'd be able to save up enough money to, towards a little car payment, or, even save up some cash to go and buy a used car. She goes, but the used car prices are so high that I have to finance a used car. So no matter what, I'm going to end up in a payment, and I don't make enough to make a payment on a car, never mind insurance and gas and, just the things to run a car. And that little talk, it stuck with me. But it was the island. It was that little microcosm, that little, what happened there wasn't necessarily happening in the rest of Canada. Maybe it was a forerunner, but at the time, what happened on the island was totally, completely different than what was happening in the rest of Canada, or the Western civilization, even, right? It had its own thing going on there. But now, like me, I moved because of the cost of living. I had to move to somewhere cheaper. I moved to Alberta. It was cheaper, but it's still catching up, right? It's still, our rent is cheaper than it was on the island by half, but the food and everything, it's still, still more than more than we can actually afford, to be honest with you. And we're not living large. We really aren't. You should see where we're living. You see that I live in the middle of nowhere. But my point about this is that I quickly saw here, that it's no better. It's exactly the same. And young people now are finding the same problems. Like my daughter went out looking for work, and nobody wants to pay any money. Of course, wages are so low, and the cost of living is so high. Like she's given up on a house, and I've actually given up on a house for us to even try to buy. I keep looking for deals. I keep looking for something to get into, and it's I need a pay raise of like $25 in order to be able to do something like that. All my money is actually going to a car, but I need the car in order to make money. It's catch 22. The So I'm talking with my daughter, and I'm like, so would you be able to afford a car at some point here? Like, if you can we would you be able to save up money to buy a car like we did on the island? Like, she was able to save up some money, and I was able to save up some money, and she went out and bought her first. Well, she did car twice, but it's kind of a funny story. I should get her to tell it. But the actual car that she ended up with was a Volkswagen Golf, and we were able to pay cash for that. It's like $2,300 or something like that, which not a big deal, not a big deal. But that was before the pandemic happened. After the pandemic, there was no way we could save up money. Like, there really wasn't. There really was no way for us to save a whole lot of money. Um, and we had four incomes coming into the house, and now we have three. I think, yeah, we have three coming into the house. And the thing is that like I really feel for young people, millennials, I guess you'd say, because there really is very little for them to work towards because it's all out of reach. Um, and that's kind of a sad thing that, like, even me, I went and looked at that Pontiac Laurentian back in the day. Yeah, I'd be able to come up with 8 grand to do that. And then, you know, a few thousand every year to put towards it to fix it up and take it to car shows, that sort of thing. You know, it's not available for the average person anymore here in Canada. That kind of thing. Like, I saw that guy again at the car show, and this is speaking volumes now. Like, it's a decent enough car. It's totally worth restoring. It is totally what used to be completely affordable. He was offering 10 grand the first year. This year, I'm seeing him I saw him in the spring. I thought for sure by now somebody would have picked that car up and ran with it, sort of thing. He's asking 8 grand. Now, I asked him again, sitting there at the car show. I'm like, so, do you had any more offers on it, sort of thing? He's like, just tire kickers. It's like nobody's coming up with any money. And I was like, I don't think anybody has any. you know, Without a line of credit or a credit card, but for something like that is a full restoration on a car. I kind of ran the numbers when I did the Pontiac Laurentian video. You can scroll back through things in my videos and watch it because I did a little bit of a math thing for it, and I was like, it is worth doing, but it is that pricey to do, and even on a frugal budget, I think this is out of reach for most people. You know, I just wanted to tell the story. I wanted to let people know what the situation is now for the next generation coming up. You know, because I thought for sure, even people my age, or even people a little bit younger than me. What would that be? Gen X, Gen Z, millennials or Gen Z. So my daughter would be Gen Z, I think, or she's still a millennial. I don't know. She's 22. But I figured, that age group was the age group where we were buying cars and going through cars. I was going through cars at my age. At that age, I was buying and selling cars. I was continually in a different car, and they can't even afford one. You know, the used car market, because regular cars are so expensive. What ended up happening was, the used car market prices stayed high. Older cars are keeping their value higher longer because people can ask it, because people can't afford new cars, right? And in there is a problem too, because most people have to finance if it's over 10 grand, right? Or over 5 grand, they might have to finance in some way. Whereas we used to be able to just do a job or do a few jobs, save up 5 grand and go out and buy a car, right? Resell it, work a couple of jobs, and buy another car, kind of thing. So yeah, I just want to let everybody know. I Tell me what you think in the comments and your thoughts on this, because it's especially if you live in Canada. Tell me if you where you live is the same thing. Like, I don't know where everybody's from. I did Somebody from Ireland actually did a message thing there. He's like, found you in Ireland. I was like, oh, cool, okay. But if you're Canadian, if you're from the US, if you're from the UK, if you're from somewhere else that I don't mention here, let me know what the market is kind of doing there. Are the young people, are they not able to afford cars where you live, right? The average person. I'm not talking about ultra rich people, because it doesn't matter. I'm not talking about ultra poor people, because that doesn't matter. I'm talking about, regular everyday people for the last gajillion years have been buying cars since cars have been made, and driving them around and having fun, and not a big deal. Now it's out of reach. You know, that's where we're at here in North America. Hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.